Good morning, all the students. So today we'll be discussing about the diseases caused by coronavirus family, that is SARS, MERS, and the recent one that is COVID-19. Okay, so let us start with the discussion. We'll be discussing about this topic under following headings, like introduction about coronavirus, the taxonomy and the origin of different viruses that causes the diseases like SARS, MERS, and COVID-19. And individually, we'll be discussing about these diseases under the headings of introduction, problem statement, epidemiology, prevention, and management. Okay, so let us start it. Now, these coronaviruses, these are enveloped viruses with positive sense RNA genome and with a nucleocapsid of helical symmetry. The name coronavirus is derived from the Latin word corona, which means crown or halo, as you can see in the picture. It has crown-like projections, hence the word. Under electron microscopic examination, each virion is surrounded by a corona or a halo. This is due to the presence of viral spikes, papillomers, emanating from each proteinaceous envelope. Okay, hence, because of the look, it has got its name. Now, these viruses, they primarily infect the upper respiratory tract and the GIT tract of both mammals and birds. The most publicized human coronavirus, of course, before the introduction of COVID-19 was SARS-CoV, which caused SARS, the disease, that is severe acute respiratory syndrome. It had got unique pathogenetic properties because it caused both upper and lower respiratory tract infection along with GI tract infection. Now we all know that common cold is a problem that is seasonal and occurs all across the globe. These coronaviruses, they are believed to cause a significant percentages of all common colds. There are many viruses that cause common cold, but the viruses from the coronavirus family are believed to contribute much of the common colds that occur in human adults. Now let us see the taxonomy of these viruses, that is the order, family, subfamily, genus, and the lineage. Okay, so the order is Nidovirales, and the family they belong to is Coronaviridae, and in that there is a subfamily which is called as Coronavirinae, and in this subfamily there are four genus, that is alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. And from the genus beta coronavirus there are four lineages, one A, B, C, and D, and the lineage B, the SARS-CoV and the SARS-CoV-2, that is the novel coronavirus, they belong to this particular lineage B. And whereas MERS-CoV, they belong to the lineage C. So these are very similar kind of viruses, as you can see from the taxonomy. Okay, their origin is very much common. Okay, here also what we can see is that there are three viruses of interest for us in coronavirus family, that is MERS, SARS, and SARS-CoV-2. So in 2012 there was an outbreak of this particular virus, and the disease was labeled by WHO as MERS, that is Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, and the virus species was labeled as Middle East Respiratory Syndrome related coronavirus, that is CoV. Whereas in 2003 there was an outbreak of coronavirus causing severe respiratory tract infection, and the WHO has labeled that disease as severe acute respiratory syndrome, that is SARS, and the virus was named as severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus. And now there is a recent outbreak of COVID-19, the disease, and the virus responsible for it now, since it is a deviation from this particular virus, it is not exactly the same we have seen in the previous slide. So the name of the virus was given as SARS-CoV-2. Okay, that is severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus 2. Okay, so this is how the nomenclature was done. Okay, Now let us discuss these diseases one by one. We'll start with the SARS, that is severe acute respiratory syndrome, and it is caused by the virus SARS-CoV. Okay. Now let us see where this SARS was first found and how it was found and what is the contribution of this man in the picture. Okay, so around this time, that is 2002, 2003, what happened was there was an American businessman who fell sick, was having difficulty in breathing and all, in a French hospital at Hanoi, and the local doctors thought that it is a bad case of pneumonia that this particular person is having. Dr. Carlo Urbani was called to see that patient. He immediately recognized that this is something new and it is caused by some novel virus. He immediately notified this to World Health Organization, and WHO immediately started a response, that is quarantine and isolation, what we are seeing now for COVID also. Okay, so that was started and that actually helped to curb the epidemic in 4 to 5 months of this particular disease SARS. Later in early part of the 2003, what happened was this very doctor went on a conference to Thailand, and on the plane itself he fell sick. He was later taken to the hospital where he was diagnosed to have the same disease which he actually notified WHO to. And later, this doctor died of the same disease. But before dying, he actually committed to donate his body and his lungs for testing and further research on SARS virus. And hence, you can see here this particular virus is named as SARS-CoV Urbanis strain because of his commitment and contribution towards the identification of the disease. Okay. Now, between November 2002 to July 2003, an outbreak of SARS in Hong Kong occurred and it nearly became a pandemic with 8,422 cases and 916 deaths worldwide, with the case fatality of 10.9% according to the World Health Organization. And within weeks, SARS spread from Hong Kong to infect individuals in 37 countries in early 2003. So this was then labeled as pandemic because it had global occurrence. Okay. So it originated from this Guangdong province, China in 2002, and it went on to affect these many countries in 2003. Okay. And these are the countries where local transmission had occurred. As you can see, it's widespread. Now we have already seen the taxonomy of it. It belongs to the family Coronaviridae, genus Coronavirus, okay, and the species is SARS coronavirus, that is SARS-CoV, and of course, this is Urbani strain. This can come as an MCQ for you in exam, okay, so remember this thing. And the host are the vertebrates. Now let us see the epidemiology of the SARS virus. Animal and environmental reservoirs. In farms, raising and slaughtering of infected animals like the palm civets can actually lead to the spread of this virus. The onset of illness is incubation period is 4 to 6 days. And how the transmission occurs? Close contact, that is droplets, fomite, and direct contact. And it is also airborne. And there is also fecal-oral route of transmission. So these are the modes of transmission for this particular virus. Now, what are the symptoms and the diagnostic tools that we have? Initially, what will happen is that there will be a spike in temperature, that is fever of around 100.4 or higher, with headache, body ache, and malaise. And a week later, there will be onset of dry cough, difficulty in breathing, severe diarrhea, and the recovery usually start after 5th to 6th day. Okay. Now, patients, once suspected, they should ideally be quarantined in specially ventilated rooms. That is, the ventilation should not be common for other rooms. And the laboratory test that is used to diagnose the SARS infection is RT-PCR, detection of SARS-CoV RNA, or enzyme immunoassay, or detection of serum antibodies to SARS-CoV RNA, ELISA for antigen as well as antibody detection, and yeah, so these are the tests that is used to detect the SARS-CoV infection. In terms of treatment, there is no standard treatment developed yet. Patients receive a combination of or a cocktail of drugs, effective antivirals and steroids like lopinavir, ritonavir plus ribavirin. These combinations of antiviral is tried. Prevention is basically isolation and sterilization of the area occupied by the SARS patients. Caution and extra precautionary measures to be taken by the medical office workers and doctors working with the patients. And vaccines. According to the Savi researchers, three vaccines candidates were developed, and in future there may be a vaccine for the SARS virus, but at present there is no vaccine. And those vaccines were whole killed vaccine, adenovirus vector vaccine, or recombinant spike protein vaccine. But those are actually in the trial phase and it is yet to develop. Okay. So in the present time, as we all know, there is no known transmission of SARS-CoV virus anywhere in the world. The most recent human case of SARS-CoV infection was reported in China in way back in April 2004, and it was believed to be laboratory acquired infection. CDC and its partners like World Health Organization, they continue to keep a watch on the SARS situation globally. We all know that there is an infection that is going on today, that is SARS-CoV-2 infection, but there is no case reported of SARS-CoV for SARS virus. And we all know that that was more dangerous than this particular virus. The case fatality rate was in the tune of 10 to 11% for SARS. Okay. Now coming to the second disease that is caused by the coronavirus family, that is MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. Let us discuss this. Now SARS outbreak occurred way back in 2002, 2003, 2004, and this MERS outbreak it occurred in 2012. So it was labeled as a novel coronavirus at that time because it was a novel virus which was different from the SARS-CoV. Okay. So it was a new virus that has not been seen in humans before, hence the novel origin of the virus. This new coronavirus is now known as Middle East Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus, that is MERS-CoV. The health officials first reported the disease in Saudi Arabia in September 2012. Through retrospective investigations, the health officials later identified that the first known case of MERS actually occurred in April 2012 and in Jordan. Now coming to the case fatality rate of this particular virus, it was 36%. That is about 3 to 4 out of every 10 patients reported with MERS have died. So far, all the cases of MERS have been linked to the countries in and nearby the Arabian Peninsula. MERS can affect anyone. MERS patients have ranged age from 1 year to 99 years old. So it can literally affect anyone across all age groups. And as you can see, it is very deadly. That is case fatality of almost 1/3. Okay. Now these are the electron microscopic pictures of MERS-CoV virus. And as you can see, there are spikes originating from the nucleocapsid membrane. So hence the name the coronavirus. So it belongs to the family of the coronavirus you've already seen. Okay. Now if we see this particular graph, on y-axis there are number of cases, on x-axis there is duration in weeks and years. Okay. And these are the color coding given for various countries which were affected with MERS. And as you can see here, in initial weeks starting in early 2012, there were only some abstract number of cases here and there, but with the later half of the 2012 and early part of the 2013, there was some spike in the number of cases. And if you see in the later half of 2013 and early half of 2014, there is a huge spike of cases in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so this was an outbreak in Saudi Arabia. And if you see at the last, there was a similar kind of outbreak that occurred in Republic of Korea. So this is an epidemic curve you can see. And there was a background number of cases and there is sudden rise of the cases in a particular country and here also. Okay. Now, as we have seen in the previous slide, there were spike in the number of cases in Korea, which is very far from Middle East. Now, how did this infection travel from Middle East to Korea? Let us see. So it all started with one man. On 20th May 2015, the Republic of Korea notified the World Health Organization that they have the first lab confirmed case of MERS-CoV. The index case had recently traveled to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain. The source of his infection remained unknown, but he traveled to the Middle East countries, that is for sure. The second case was his wife, the third was his hospital roommate, the fourth was the daughter of the roommate. See, that is how it spreads, okay? And the fifth was the healthcare workers. We are never spared. So ultimately, it spread to the healthcare workers involved in the management. So there was a huge spike in the number of cases in Korea, and the neighboring countries there were very less number of cases, and of course the death were very high in this particular disease. Okay, so this is how it spreads actually. Now, what is the source of this virus? MERS-CoV is actually a zoonotic disease that is transmitted from animals to humans. The origins of this virus is not fully understood, but according to the analysis of different virus genomes, it is believed that it originated in bats and then was transmitted to camels and sometimes in the distant past, and then it actually got traveled to human beings from the infected camels. Okay, see here. The bats are the primary host for MERS-CoV. Maybe via saliva, feces, or airborne. Somehow this infection traveled to the camels, who then acted as a reservoir and intermediate host. And maybe via saliva, feces, or airborne, it got transmitted to another camel and then finally to humans. And of course, when it spread to the humans, then there is person to person direct contact via large respiratory droplets due to coughing, sneezing, and via fomites. Now, the spread to humans from camels can be because of the milk, urine, or maybe contamination of the meat, consumption of the contaminated meat. So, this is how actually it got spread to humans. So, the primary host is bat. Remember, though we may think that this is the primary host, the primary host was bat. Okay. Now, transmission from humans to humans. Luckily for us, the virus does not appear to pass easily from person to person unless there is a close contact, such as providing the clinical care to the infected patients. This has been seen among family members, patients, and healthcare workers. That is the very close contacts. Undetermined droplet and direct contact, probably the large droplet transmission is suspected to be the most likely route. It's not the small droplet infections. Okay, so it is not going to stay in the air for long. So very close contact. Majority of the cases have been resulted from human to human transmission in healthcare setting because there is a close proximity contact. All reported cases have been linked to countries in and near the Arabian Peninsula. So there is a link to that. The camel is the link. Okay. So this is the transmission. Now coming to the symptoms and complication, most people confirmed to have MERS-CoV infection have had severe acute respiratory illnesses with symptoms of fever, cough, and shortness of breath. The triage of symptoms, that is fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Gastrointestinal symptoms including diarrhea and nausea is also seen. Most severe complications such as pneumonia, kidney failure in many cases is seen. About 3 to 4 out of 10 we have already seen reported with MERS have been died. So again the case fatality rate is very high. Most of the people who died had an underlying comorbid conditions. Okay, so that is also there. So just side by side, compare all these symptoms, what we are seeing here, all the diagnostic tool, all the preventive measures with what is being taken now, because we can learn so much from history. And these viruses are very much similar to COVID-19, and in fact they were more deadly. Only the infectivity is very less, but apart from that, they were deadly compared to the COVID-19. And what are the measures that they have taken during that time to actually curb those diseases that can come actually handy and helpful for us in actually preventing the spread of COVID-19. Now, some of the infected people had very mild symptoms, such as cold-like symptoms and no symptom at all, and they recovered. People with pre-existing conditions like diabetes, cancer, chronic lung disease, heart disease, or kidney disease had problems. And also people with weakened immunity, like organ transplant patients, patients on steroid for some reasons, or like cancer patients or HIV patients, they are more likely to be infected with MERS-CoV or have severe disease. Most MERS-CoV cases have been reported in adults, that is, the median age group is approximately 50 years with male preponderance. Although children and adults of all age groups have been infected, that is ranging from 9 months to 99 years, but the most common age group infected is 50 years, okay, and in gender male. The incubation period for this particular virus ranges from 2 to 14 days, with median incubation period being 5 to 6 days. And the median time for onset of illness to hospitalization is approximately 4 days. In critically ill patients, the median time of onset to ICU admission is approximately 5 days, and the median time of onset from the onset to death is approximately 12 days. And this all data we got actually is by studying the patients who developed the disease. Okay. Radiographic findings may include unilateral or bilateral patchy densities or opacities, interstitial infiltrates, consolidation, and pleural effusions. A rapid progression to acute respiratory failure, acute respiratory distress syndrome, refractory hypoxia, and extrapulmonary complications like acute kidney injury requiring a renal replacement therapy, hypertension requiring vasopressors, hepatic inflammation, septic shock, etc. have been reported. Now, coming to the lab diagnosis, again the real-time PCR is used to confirm the MERS-CoV cases, and the samples can be taken from the respiratory tract, blood, or stool samples. To increase the likelihood of the detection of MERS-CoV infection, the Center for Disease Control recommend collecting multiple specimens from different sites at different times after the onset of symptoms. CDC also strongly recommends a testing of lower respiratory tract specimen like a bronchoalveolar lavage fluid or tracheal aspirate, and a nasopharyngeal swab and serum. Stool specimens are of low priority because the viral load is very less. If the symptom onset was more than 14 days prior, CDC also recommend to do an additional testing of serum specimen via the CDC MERS-CoV serology assay to look for the antibodies. Okay, so these are the tests. Now, coming to the treatment, there is no specific antiviral treatment recommended for MERS-CoV infection. Here also, a cocktail of various antiviral drugs have been tried to various levels of success. Individuals with MERS can seek medical care to help to relieve the symptoms. And for severe cases, current treatment includes care to support vital organ functions, and any additional benefits of novel pharmacological agents remain uncertain. So these all these lines can very well be said for COVID also. So there is so much of similarity. Now these are the agents that can be tried and was tried and is tried for MERS infection, that is convalescent plasma, interferon, protease inhibitors, IV immunoglobulins, and some of the other drugs, corticosteroids, interferon combination with antiviral drugs. So, as we have already said, the cocktail of drugs have been tried, but none to be very effective in treating the patients with MERS. Now, as the source of the virus is also not very much known to us, as also the mode of transmission, so we cannot really advise on the specific preventive measures, but there are some generic measures that should always be there to prevent any kind of fomite or close contact or droplet-borne infections, like washing of the hands frequently with soap and water. It's an enveloped virus which can be easily destroyed with soap. Covering of the nose and mouth while coughing and sneezing, that is the cough etiquettes. And if some person is sick, they can wear mask, and the other people can wear masks to protect themselves. Avoid touching of hands on eyes, nose and mouth, and avoid personal contact. Clean and disinfect the surfaces which are frequently touched, like the doorknobs, etc. So those measures that we are actually trying to do now to prevent COVID infections are there for this particular virus infections, as the mode of spread is very much similar. Okay. Now, in this particular virus, there is some hint towards the spread from an animal, that is camel. So, contact with any obvious sick animal, including birds and the camels, should be avoided. Sick animals should never be slaughtered for consumption. The consumption of raw or uncooked animal products, including milk and meat, carries a high risk of infection from a variety of organisms that might cause the disease in humans. So, not only this, many diseases, dishes, drinking glasses, cups, eating utensils. So, all the fomites actually can spread the disease. Okay. And again, there is no specific vaccine for MERS. So, those measures are very important again. Okay. Those generic measures. And the treatment is also very basic and supportive, and it is based on the clinical condition. Okay, so our primary focus should be on the generic basic level of prevention. Now, coming to the third type of disease that is caused by this virus from coronavirus family, and that is actually troubling the world at present, that is COVID-19. So, let us discuss that in brief. Okay. Now, as we have already discussed, that it is caused by coronavirus named SARS-CoV-2, and we know now that why it is labeled as 2. Okay, it's an enveloped RNA virus. This is also we have discussed. Now, this is very important to us, even from the prevention point of view, because those enveloped viruses are easily destroyable virus. Usually, the envelope is made up of lipid layer and it gets easily destroyed with soap and water. So hence the hand hygiene and hand washing is becomes very effective, and the sanitizers. Okay, it's a moderately big virus and it is one of the seven important coronaviruses. Okay, four types of common coronaviruses that is seen in common cold, and of course the three SARS, MERS, and SARS-CoV-2. So these seven viruses. Okay. Now, how it all started. In December 2019, there were clusters of pneumonia cases of unknown origin in China. Okay, and these were the X-ray pictures that were there for those patients. And this was there in the Wuhan province of China. Okay, and since there was a clustering of cases, so they tried to study the epidemiology of those cases, and what they found out was that out of 41 patients, 27 patients had an exposure to a seafood market. Okay, we know that SARS was originated in again one of the province in China, Guangdong province in China, and affected many people, and there were many deaths. Okay, so they suspected that this is something serious, and in the similar lines. Okay, so this is the timeline. On 12th December 2019, Wuhan reported the first case. Okay, and on 31st December, Chinese authorities allegedly alerted WHO about the cases of pneumonia of unknown etiology. We don't know whether they alerted or not. On 1st Jan 2020, Wuhan seafood market was closed because they found out the epidemiological link to that market. On 3rd January, India notified by WHO about this particular disease. On Jan 7th, 2019, nCoV was identified as a novel entity. And on Jan 12th, Wuhan's first death was reported. So see, 12th December to 12th Jan, already one death occurred in that time. And then it started spreading. That is, cases outside China were seen. Then the virus was renamed as SARS-CoV-2 and the disease as COVID-19 in 11th February. And on March 3rd, 74 countries were already affected with local transmission in 31 countries. Okay, so WHO then made a risk assessment of this particular disease and they categorized China as well as the regional countries as well as the globe into very high risk category depending on these parameters: likelihood of spread, potential impact to human health, and likelihood of insufficient control capabilities. So on assessing on these grounds, WHO has categorized the origin country as well as the region as well as the globe into very high risk category. Okay, now this is the current problem statement. These many coronavirus cases in the world and these many deaths have already occurred, though many of them have already recovered. And situation in India, as we already know, it's worsening. Around 80,000 deaths already reported, and these many have already recovered. Okay, so this is the current problem statement in the world as well as in our country. Now, if you see this particular graph with total number of cases on the y-axis and the time duration on the x-axis, there were decimal number of cases initially, okay, in our country, and the cases started rising from June 20 onwards. And if you see now, this is following a parabolic curve. Okay, it's increasing exponentially in our country now. Okay, it has taken an exponential route. So that is alarming actually. Now, one of the positives is that if you compare the number of newly infected with the number of recovered and discharged patients, they are almost going hand in hand. Though the cumulative number of infected individuals is increasing, but the number of recoveries are also more. So that's a good sign. Now, coming to the epidemiology of COVID-19, it is caused by, of course, we know that it is caused by coronavirus belonging to a large family of coronavirus. Okay, the etiological agent we already know it's a SARS-CoV-2. It's a novel coronavirus agent. Transmission takes place via respiratory route, as Bali sir has also discussed in his previous classes, that there are many portal of entry for respiratory route. So there is increased susceptibility to various kinds of infection, and COVID-19 is no exception. And of course, nosocomial infections is also documented among patients who are admitted in the wards. Okay, the incubation period is around 2 to 14 days. It's a big duration from 2 to 14 days. We are not able to pinpoint at a particular fixed duration. Okay, most common symptom is fever, fatigue, dry cough, and breathing difficulty. Other symptoms can be sore throat, rhinorrhea, gastrointestinal symptoms like diarrhea. Okay, nausea, vomiting are also seen in about 20% of the cases. Now, what are the modes of transmission for novel coronavirus? From respiratory secretions like coughing, sneezing, blowing of the nose, and spitting. It can be fomite transmission, that is touching the contaminated surface, to nose, mouth, and eyes, shaking hands, hugging, bodily contacts, and it can be droplet. And recently, they have suggested, the WHO has told and hints toward airborne infection also. Okay, so it can spread up to 2 meters by coughing or sneezing, as there are small droplets and can remain in airborne in the AC room. So that is why there should be separate AC rooms for patients. Okay, during aerosol generation procedures like intubation, nasal swab, Ryle's tube, etc., there is high risk of contamination because there is high risk of secretion generation in these procedures. Okay. Now, whom to label a contact? A contact is a person who experienced any one of the following exposure during the 2 days before the onset and 14 days after the onset of symptoms. of a probable or confirmed case. First is face-to-face contact with a probable or confirmed case with one within 1 meter distance for more than 15 minutes. It's always a question. Even for the medicos, they always ask, "Sir, I came in contact with a positive case. Should I get the test done and all?" So this is the standard definition of contact. What is labeled as contact? So now this should be very clear to you that only this is a contact, and this is a contact that leads or increases the chances of contracting the disease. Okay, first is face to face contact with a probable or confirmed case within 1 meter for more than 15 minutes. Okay, direct physical contact with a probable or confirmed case, direct care for a probable or confirmed COVID-19 case without the use of PPE. With the use of PPE, if even if you're talking with the patient for more than 15 minutes, it is not considered as a contact. Other situations as indicated by the local. So local authorities like suppose India can lay another guideline to label person as a contact. Okay, so that is a provision that is there. Note, for a confirmed asymptomatic case, the period of contact is measured as 2 days before through the 14 days after the date on which the sample was taken, which led to the confirmation. So that we need to remember. Okay. Once the case is confirmed, the period of contact is measured as 2 days before and through the 14 days after the date on which the sample was taken. Okay. So that we need to know because we want to do the contact tracing also, from where the person got the infection, who all actually came in contact with this particular person. By knowing these definitions, we can actually facilitate this process of contact tracing. Now let us understand the concept of transmissibility to understand how this virus can be transmitted and what are the precautions we need to take on this. Okay, so if the droplet is of the size of more than 5 micron, then the droplet will settle down before reaching to 1 meter distance. Okay, like that. Suppose this is the large size droplets and the susceptible individual. Why they say that the susceptible individual should be more than 1 meter distance? Because usually the droplets in COVID-19 is of more than 5 micron meter in size. So they will die down before reaching the susceptible individual. But nowadays, the WHO is suggesting that this infection can be airborne. They don't know for sure. But if it is airborne, then even they can travel the distance of more than 1 meter and can remain suspended in air for a long time. And of course, direct physical contact and indirect contact with the fomite obviously will lead to the disease. Okay. Now, another concept in transmissibility is the survival of the virus outside the body. Okay. So it can survive for 1 to 2 days on non-porous surfaces, 8 to 12 hours on porous surfaces. Okay, currently this information on COVID-19 is not very clear. I mean, these are just speculations based on some of the studies done by some of the researchers. Okay, common disinfectants such as more than 70% of alcohol and bleach can kill the virus. That's why we are using sanitizers with ethanol concentration of 70% and above. The incubation period, current estimates of the incubation period is also like it's a big range, 2 to 14 days, because we are not very sure on the specifics. Okay, now let us compare the severity and transmissibility of the human infection with novel coronavirus and influenza virus, that is the flu virus or the viral in the layman terms. Usually now people are saying that I don't have COVID, I have only viral infection. What they don't know is that all these infections are viral infections only. So let us compare how this coronavirus is compared with the influenza virus. Okay, so we will be comparing in terms of transmissibility and severity. Now this transmissibility is expressed in terms of R naught number and severity in terms of case fatality rate. Okay, and now what is this R naught? It is just a basic reproduction number. It indicates the number of people a patient can directly infect in a healthy population. Okay, so let us see. Now for COVID-19, the transmissibility is moderately high. It is 2. One person can infect 2%. That's why the graph was like this. You have seen the graph, parabola, okay? And the severity, the case fatality is in the range of 1 to 3%, okay? Whereas if you see SARS, it has got high transmissibility and high severity. Thank God we don't have a pandemic for SARS that is much more deadly and much more infective. If we compare this with MERS, it is mildly transmissible, but if you see the mortality, it is 3 times more than SARS. Forget COVID. We have seen one third of mortality in MERS, but luckily the transmissibility is one third of SARS, 3 times of severity, one third of SARS. So balancing it out. And these are the other viruses, but our focus should be of these three viruses. Okay, you got the idea about the transmissibility and severity. This is how we actually alert, WHO actually alert the countries on the level of risk that we have. Since the COVID-19 transmissibility was of moderate level and the severity also was of moderate level, so high alert was issued. Okay. Now let us see the distribution pattern of this particular disease to understand the disease better. Okay, so we'll be quickly seeing the distribution. Okay, so first is the age distribution. Mostly this particular virus is seen in elderly age group. Okay, this is based on the large sample study that is done in China. Okay, so the median age is 51 years. Okay, and mostly slightly more common in males, and the infection in healthcare workers is around 3.8%. Okay, it was reported 88% in Hubli. Okay, now coming to the distribution on severity, if we see most of the cases are mild. Okay, and only 14%, around 14% are severe, and around 4 to 5% are critical. Okay, and not all the those who are critical are going to die, so that's why the death rates are less, around in the tune of around 1 to 3%. Okay, now if we see the breakup of the death rate also, majority of the death rate among those who are severe is among those who are elderly. So again, age is a big factor in terms of both infectivity and mortality as well. Okay, so case fatality rate is higher among older age group. Again, if you see, the severity of illness also depends on the comorbid condition. So if the person is having comorbidity, he is more likely to have a serious disease compared to the people with no comorbidity. Okay, now what are the signs and symptoms? We all know actually of all those signs and symptoms. We've already discussed. The four major signs and symptoms are fever, dry cough, sore throat, and breathlessness. There are other symptoms like exhaustion, loss of smell. This is considered to be one of the earliest symptoms, though it is not a severe symptom, but it's an earlier indication. Headache, less frequently running nose, and diarrhea also. Diarrhea is also one of the symptom of COVID. Signs, there will be raised temperature, increased pulse rate, tachypnea, desaturation, minimal lung signs on auscultations in the form of rales can be seen. Okay, though the desaturation will be more, but these lung signs will be less. Okay, so that we need to keep in mind. Now, this is the breakup of those symptoms which are more common and which are less common. This is actually based on the study that we have already discussed. So, fever is the most common symptom, then cough, and then fatigue. Sputum production is seen in one third of the cases. Shortness of the breath is seen in one fifth of the cases. Okay, so like that. Okay. Now, if we want to know whether we have COVID or common cold or flu or allergies, often people may ask you that what is the chance that I am having COVID and not common cold or flu. So these are the comparisons. Fever is a common thing in COVID-19, whereas it is a rare in common cold. It may be seen in the flu. Okay. It is very rarely seen in allergies. Dry cough is a typical feature of COVID-19. So that's why we say it's an important feature. It is not seen here, it is not seen here, it is sometimes seen here. Shortness of breath is a common feature here. And shortness of breath with fever, it can be COVID because in allergies there is no fever but there is shortness of breath. So that is how you can gauge. Okay. Sore throat is sometimes seen in COVID-19, which is very common in common cold and flu. Okay, diarrhea is a rare entity here, but it is seen. Okay, like that. Sneezing is not seen in COVID-19. Often people say that a person near me, he is actually having sneezing. What are the chances that he has COVID? He may be having allergies, okay, or common cold. Okay, it's never seen. Though runny nose is seen in COVID-19. Now, what are the supportive investigations that needs to be done? The CBC to look for elevated blood counts and to look for the hemoglobin, chest X-ray, ground glass opacities at the peripheries are seen, chest CT, multiple peripheral opacities and ARDS like picture is seen in chest CT. Now these are the ground glass like opacities in the chest CT and you can see in the X-ray as well. Okay, it's a typical texture of a ground glass. Okay. So the radiological signs that can be seen are the ground glass opacities, the crazy paving patterns, that is the ground glass opacity with superimposed inter or intralobular septal thickening. Okay. And then there can be consolidation with air bronchogram. So these are the different findings that can be seen in the chest CT. And what can be the specific test for the diagnosis of COVID-19? We all know it. That is, it is the RT-PCR. The swab can be taken from nasopharynx, oropharynx, endotracheal tube, or bronchoalveolar lavage. It tests the antigen, that is actually the genetic material. Okay, and it takes around 4 to 5 hours. It has got high specificity and high sensitivity. But the swab quality with viral RNA is mostly between the 5th to 10th day after the infection, and that is why the sensitivity is considered to be low. Okay, this particular RT-PCR, we know that it has got very high specificity and very high sensitivity. But the problem with many false negative tests that is happening is because of this, of the swab quality, because we don't get the enough virus in the sample for it to be detected, and because the ideal time for detection is 5th to 10th day. Okay, intermittent shedding of the virus can lead to swab false negative in 30%. That's what I've already said. Viral shedding usually occur up to 28 days. False positives never occur in RT-PCR. Remember this. Many people will ask you, I am tested positive. Should I get this test done again to just reconfirm? It is never gonna happen. Even false negative also doesn't happen in RT-PCR if you actually leave it to the machine only. If all other parameters are absolutely normal, then RT-PCR will never give false negative this thing also. It's just the intermittent shedding of the virus and also this faulty sampling that has led to this false negativity. Okay. Other tests are antibody tests, that is a rapid quality test. Okay, which can detect the antibody in the blood. ELISA, that is the quantitative test for antibodies or IG antibodies. Then there is something called as RAT, rapid antigen test, that is introduced by government, which can give a result in like 1 to 2 hours, and this can be done in place of RT-PCR in low resource setting or as a primary investigation. Okay. Now coming to the testing strategy by ICMR, this is the latest guidelines for testing. This is released in September only. So for routine surveillance purpose in containment zone and screening point of entry, what we do is that we do RAT, that is rapid antigen test, and RT-PCR or TrueNAT or CBNAT, whatever is available. We do it for all symptomatic individual, that is influenza-like illness symptoms, including the healthcare workers and the frontline workers. All asymptomatic direct high risk contact, I've already defined you the contact. Okay, those should be tested, and those should be tested on day 5 and day 10 of coming in contact. Usually what they do is that they will ask you, okay, your family member is has come positive, now you also get tested. No, you should get it tested on 5th to 10th day. Okay, so that there is enough viral load for the machine to be detected and there is no false negative report. All asymptomatic high risk individuals, we know that elderly, comorbidity, etc. in containment zone. Okay, rat should be ideally used in containment zone for all individuals basically, but because of lack of resources we only use for some certain specific individuals with high risk. Now coming to the routine surveillance strategy in non-containment zone, again RT-PCR and rat should be used for all symptomatic ILA individuals with history of international travel in the last 14 days, in all symptomatic ILI symptoms contact of a lab confirmed cases. If they are symptomatic and they were in contact with a lab confirmed case, they should be tested. All symptomatic ILI symptoms, healthcare workers, frontline workers involved in the containment and mitigation activities. So usually here we are testing for only symptomatics in non-containment zones. Okay, all symptomatic ILI cases among returnees and migrants within 7 days of illness, and all asymptomatic high-risk contact of a case. Okay, rat is recommended for the first choice in this case. Now in hospital setting, the choice of test in order are RT-PCR, TrueNAT, CBNAT, again a rat, and the testing strategy is that all patients of SARI, that is severe acute respiratory illness, remember this term, okay, should be tested regardless the history of contact. All symptomatic ILI symptom patients presenting in a healthcare setting should be tested. Asymptomatic high-risk contact who are hospitalized or seek immediate hospitalization, such as immunocompromised individuals, patients with diagnosed malignancy, transplant recipients, patients with chronic comorbidities should be tested. Asymptomatic patient undergoing surgical or non-surgical invasive procedures not to be tested more than once a week during the stay of the hospital. Okay. All pregnant women nearing the labor who are in hospital for delivery should be tested because they may need cesarean section and invasive procedures. And for that, there should be a confirmation of the COVID testing so that appropriate precaution to be taken during the surgery or during the delivery also. So let us quickly discuss the management. We will not be going into the details of it, but just an overview of the management. Okay, so we decide our management on the basis of severity. Okay, if the person is asymptomatic, the best is to home isolate or isolate the person in a center, that is a COVID care center. Okay, where they are isolated, given proper care, supplements are given, and once they fulfill the criteria for discharge, they are discharged. On mild cases, some symptomatic treatment is given. In moderate cases where breathlessness and desaturation is there, they need hospitalized care and may need oxygen. Okay, in severe cases, high flow nasal cannula or ventilators may be needed. So these can be provided only in the ICU. Okay, there can be cytokine storm also that we must have heard about it. So the treatment for the same should be provided, and ventilators and plasma therapy are also being done. Okay. Now these are the medicines and some supplements that are being tried. Hydroxychloroquine is being tried. Tablet azithromycin is given for 5 days for the patients, and higher antibiotics in the ICU care. Antivirals like remdesivir are being given and have shown promising results. And some supplements like zinc and vitamin C are also given. Even vitamin D is also being tried. Injection thiamine is also being tried in severe cases. Okay. See, for oxygen therapy, if SpO2 falls below 96%, then we can start early oxygen, especially in comorbid patients. We can start with 4 liters of oxygen and increase accordingly. Nasal cannula should be preferred over mask. There are many reasons for it. And target SpO2 should be around 92 to 96. If the patient is not responding, then we can increase the oxygen by 10, like 10 to 12 liters. Okay, and we can also consider for high flow nasal cannula. Other strategies can be oxygen therapy with a non-rebreathing face mask, awake prone ventilation. This has shown promising result because major portion of our lungs is on our backside. Okay, and antipyretics and antibiotics as per the pre-existing or local protocol, nutrition and diet focus should be there. Also, low molecular heparin is being tried as they have found out that there is some procoagulant activity going on with the mechanism of action of COVID. So low molecular weight heparin is also. Now, a lot has been talked about cytokine storm. So that is being seen in SARS-CoV-2 infection. So there is widespread inflammation in the lungs, which leads to release of cytokine and its sequelae. So most of these patients deteriorate from moderate to severe stage very rapidly. So with index of suspicion, interleukin 6 levels can be assessed, and if elevated, we can start with MPS, that is methylprednisolone, along with low molecular weight heparin and some drugs like tocilizumab, which has shown promising results. Okay, it's a monoclonal antibody to block the receptors for interleukin. Okay, so when we can consider for ICU admissions, like when the person is having hypoxia and respiratory distress without being on oxygen, then if the patient is hemodynamically unstable or has comorbid conditions, then we can actually look for ICU admissions and provide high flow oxygen care, investigate for cytokine storm, CPAP, BiPAP with oronasal mask, okay, intubate it if it needed. So these are the basic measures that can be provided in ICU. Now, how to prevent it? We have actually discussed quite a lot of time during this presentation. Cover the cough and sneeze, that is cough etiquette, everyone, everywhere, always. Social distancing, everyone, everywhere, always. Basic hand hygiene, personal protective equipment for the essential staff. So these are some basic measures, and that though have been said time and again, but is very seldom followed. Okay. As we have already seen with the studies that is done, that it mainly occurs when the person comes in close contact. So practice social distancing at least 2 meters between the people to be very sure of not getting the infection, especially the sick people. Cough and respiratory etiquettes. Wear a mask, not if available. All should wear a mask in public. Okay. Sneeze and cough into your sleeves and cover with a tissue and or scarf or mask. Okay. Not in the hands. Then, of course, if you have coughed into your hands, then wash immediately with soap and water. Hand washing should be practiced before eating or feeding others, after coughing and sneezing, touching the patient, their bedside, clothes, utensils before and after preparing food, etc. Okay, so that should be followed. In some instances, depending on the risk, personal protective equipment should be used, as mask, eye protective equipment should be worn. Okay. Now, just to conclude, this topic was taken just to orient you about the different types of coronaviruses and how they've evolved from the SARS to MERS, now COVID-19, how they are related, and what are the similarities in terms of the origin as well as in terms of the mode of spread and preventive measures, what all common preventive measures that are there to prevent all these types of viruses and the similar other viruses. What are the common difficulties that we are facing in terms of management and prevention of these viruses? As we've already seen, there is no vaccine candidate for SARS and MERS that has been approved that is effective for those diseases. Now we are trying for a vaccine candidate for COVID-19. Hopefully we will succeed. So there is a lot to learn from the history and similarities in the nature of viruses. Okay, so just the bullet points that it's a respiratory pathogen and it's easily transmissible from person to person, and elderlies and comorbid are at high risk both for transmission as well as for mortality, and we know that the cases are rising. We should focus on the containment for elimination possible, case management, contact tracing, and strengthening of the health system so that it is prepared for the worst, and public risk communication. Okay, so that is all about the today's presentation. Okay.